Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Paul Karolyi, and you are listening to Mayoral Madness, our effort to get to know all 17 candidates who want to be Denver's next mayor. Today, I'm speaking with Trinidad Rodriguez. Trinidad, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good morning. It's great to be with you.
So I'm sure you've been out campaigning all across the city last few weeks. We're about a month and a half out from Election Day. I would love to hear what is somewhere new or new to you that you've loved recently.
Cafe Tonantzin is in the Santa Fe Arts District on 9th and Santa Fe. It's owned by a proprietor, Cynthia Diaz, who is also an entrepreneur, a really exciting entrepreneur. They're opening their next location up in Boulder, actually. She's a supporter of mine. It's a beautiful place. They pay such great attention to their foods, and then all of their coffee drinks have Mexican sort of ingredients incorporated into them. It's awesome.
Neat. What should I order there next time I'm there?
Well, there's a latte using horchata, which is the rice drink, aguas fresca. It's delicious.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so I've got a question for you from the news. Last week, I saw that the old Denver Diner has officially reopened as a Chase Bank. This is something we've talked about a lot on the podcast, how the pandemic basically killed the late night diner in Denver. There's still a couple of old favorites, but most of them are gone. How would you support our remaining diners and all of the other small businesses still struggling with the pandemic?
Really, it's about making for a clean and safe environment throughout our city, a sense of safety so that people do want to go out and venture out and gather in these really valuable institutions that really are part of the fabric of our building our community. I remember sitting at those late night diners, including Pete's Kitchen, across the street from where I went to high school at East High School. And, that's where you had some of the most important conversations of the night were in those diners. So I don't need to tell you how important they are. But restoring our sense of safety is actually on our mayor's plate here. And going out after dark, I'm generally willing to do that, but I can understand why there's really an eerie and dismal feeling out after dark, and we need to turn that and reverse that trend so that people can pursue their interests.
I mean, let's talk about it. How do you actually do that? I mean, because you're talking about feelings and confidence, and these things are really hard. I mean, this is personal. This is there's a million different factors of why someone might feel that way. So how would you as mayor actually do that?
Yeah, it is personal. I'm glad you said that. It's personal for me because there are really two sides to this for me. One is, remembering when I was 9 years old when our house was invaded, and I was raised by a single mom in West Denver, and being helpless in that situation, and how police arriving on the scene really did, restore my sense of safety so that I could, sleep that night. My mom could feel safe again, finally. By the same token, I know that whenever I move my car just across the street for street sweeping, I need to make sure I have my ID on me, even for that short little step, because I don't want to be out there and be pulled over and have done something wrong. The consequences of giving someone who's angry or has some problem, an officer who has problems, an excuse to do something more to me is really precarious and scary. But let me talk really quickly about what my plan is for safety.
Please do.
Restoring that sense of public safety. Yes, it's really about starting with restoring our ranks of our police department, and our police department is actually, our police officer ranks are about the same size as they were in 1997. Yet our city has grown by 50%. And those numbers just don't work for a sense of safety. Whether you think, there are obviously various sides to this, and I've just talked about the two sides I experience. And this is an opportunity to actually build equity in policing in terms of our expansion of our ranks. And I can tell you more about that for sure.
So hiring up the police force back to full strength, as you might say. But is there anything you would change about the way the police are regulated, or anything about the training? Because there are a lot of people out there for whom a police officer showing up, does not convey a feeling of safety.
Yeah, I understand that. And really the opportunity that we have in pursuing this path of rebuilding our ranks is to recruit in diverse neighborhoods. So having a police force that more closely reflects the diversity of our city and the diversity of people in the criminal justice system is a big step in the right direction. The second is training. Yes, more training focused on de-escalation and non-lethal use of force and techniques to preserve life. And then finally, investing in specialized teams. So teams like STAR that have a more dedicated mission to respond to, more mental health type crises. So that's but we can do this in many more ways. We can have teams that are specialized investigator teams because we actually have to close cases and we have to, hold people accountable. And all of those function, we have to, enforce speed limits. All these functions are diminished in an environment where we don't have enough officers.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about housing because rents are high. Home ownership is a pipe dream for too many Denverites. And I know you were the chair of the board of the Denver Housing Authority for over a decade. So I'm just guessing, but I bet you've got a bunch of ideas that you were not able to make happen in that position, but as mayor, you would be able to do to improve our housing situation. I'd love to hear some. What do you got?
Yeah, I was on the board of Denver Housing Authority for 10 years. I was chair for a few years over that time. Just to clarify, it was a real honor because Denver Housing Authority helped me and my mom through tough times when we were facing housing instability. And my ideas really are rooted in the fact that I've led the organization and I've been served by the organization, as I also have used my professional and management skill to actually finance projects that went on to build affordable housing. So when I think about what I as mayor can do is really be active in supporting Denver Housing Authority by accelerating our supply and delivery of new and additional affordable housing. By really leveraging our existing resources, we did a D3 bond that accelerated about $150 million in projects a couple years ago. And we can do that to unlock even more rapid delivery of supply and diversity of supply. So, types of housing that meets the needs that we haven't really touched nearly enough of yet, which is obviously the lowest income Denverites, but also people who need protection from falling into poverty, who are at that workforce level and really just need a hand to stay out of poverty and grow.
Here's a specific question on the housing issue, also from the news. Earlier this week, state lawmakers were debating a new bill that would repeal the statewide ban on rent control. If they pass it and allow municipalities to implement rent control, would you as mayor do that? Do you think rent control is the right thing for Denver?
It's not. No, I don't think it's the right thing for Denver. The research is quite compelling that suggests that rent control actually forces more single family and maybe duplex rental stock into single family ownership. And that means accelerating the path of gentrification and elevation of prices in markets. That might work great for other communities out in Denver, but it's not going to work in Denver, where we're facing so much demand for our city and so little ability to just build our way out of this. It's just it's the wrong way.
Another issue in the housing conversation is this new affordable housing measure that the city passed last year that requires developers to designate a certain amount of new builds as affordable for certain bands of area and media income. What do you think of that policy? Would you strengthen it? Would you change it? Would you repeal it?
I respect it. I have concerns about it. Similarly, these market interventions, oftentimes, I do believe that we can create incentives and ways for capital investors and real estate investors to make more impactful investments that actually slow down our housing cost increases. That's really what the battle we're going to be fighting. And so I think there are better ways to do it. I don't think I would repeal it, but it does give me a lot of concern.
Connected to the housing issue, of course, is the growing number of people living unhoused on the streets of our city. You've said that you would declare a state of emergency to tackle this issue, but what's next after that? What's the plan to help people?
Yeah, the plan is to, as a first step after that, to actually create new pathways to mental health and substance use disorder treatments by building a field hospital and then employing techniques that and access that helps people into treatment on a voluntary and an involuntary basis in the most humane possible way. Watching hundreds of people die every year, 853 over the last 5 years, is the inhumane thing to do. The humane thing to do is actually start providing people a way to get help and leave that recurring tragedy that we're just standing by and watching every single day. I also committed to moving my office to this field treatment hospital as long as anyone is receiving treatment. Because when I remember when I was realizing that my godfather was homeless with addiction when I was 11, I also, in addition to wanting someone to protect him from himself, I also knew I wanted someone who really cared to have his or her eyes on him, because if something happened to him or we needed to get in touch with him, we had a way.
So I have to ask you about that one word you said a minute ago, involuntary. I know you've advocated in the past for, quote, involuntary holds of homeless people in certain circumstances. This is a controversial proposal. New York Mayor Eric Adams got in some hot water making similar proposal recently. Can you explain the circumstances where you think it would be appropriate to hold an innocent person against their will?
Yeah, it really stems from a clinical diagnosis of the conditions where people's health disorders that cause them to be of danger to themselves and others. And that is not humane to let someone be of danger to themselves and others in the most hazardous possible conditions. You know, the humane thing to do is actually to do something that actually gets beyond, the clear symptoms of the disorder that cause people to resist treatment. There are a whole lot of other ways we can make sure our burden is extremely high to ensure that this is a ethical and humane approach. And we can satisfy that burden by delivering a quality and a true healing, so that people can go on and pursue longer term healing and recovery, and we can support them through that with the rest of our ecosystem in our community battling this challenge.
I've talked to people about this proposal in the past, and I think there's some people out there for whom this is just a total non-starter, this idea of involuntary holds. Like, they would say the Bill of Rights is a high enough burden to meet. We don't need to go higher than that. We don't need to have some different standard. What do you say to those people for whom this is just like too uncomfortable of an idea?
Yeah, I'd say, well, our state law, first of all, allows for this, and there were enhancements to our state law in 2021. Eric Adams has started this process. I was actually first inspired by Mayor London Breed in San Francisco, who really started to innovate. The California State Legislature expanded their concept of conservatorship under their state law. And Mayor London Breed has been among the real pioneers of tackling the health shortfall that we're just not doing enough of in our communities. And frankly, that's has the prospects, I think, to really grow out of control. Mayor Michelle Wu in Boston has talked about this, and Karen Bass, on her first day in office, new mayor of Los Angeles, declared an emergency with respect to people living unhoused on their streets. Again, as I will do. The legal, I also believe people have a right to healthcare. Okay. And if there's someone sitting in an emergency room in Denver Health, to kick them out and deny them healthcare is not the right approach. And that's effectively what we're doing today.
All right, let's take a step back. Why do you want to be mayor?
To build my vision for this city. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself, as I talk about this, to build my vision of the city where every Denverite, regardless of the neighborhood they're in, can go on to achieve their version of success. I was born and raised in West Denver by a single mom. And we've faced these challenges along the way. I've alluded to some of them, but the city really helped us in the tough times. And I wanted to pay it forward. So when I was 25 years ago, when I started my career, I also started giving and serving in the community to do just that. And my leadership and financing went on to secure financing for affordable housing communities, hospitals and clinics, and schools. And, Denver's in some really tough times today, and we've talked about a couple of the issues already. But I believe in Denver, and I'm going to keep fighting for Denver. And all of that experience and that commitment sets me apart. We can build my vision, and it's going to take all of us, frankly, but I'm committed and ready to do it. And I think that message is resonating with Denverites.
So the flip side of that same question is, why would you be a good mayor? Having
been experienced what it feels like to be served by the systems that Denver is responsible for building, maintaining, operating, innovating in, like going to Denver Health to get my healthcare growing up, and going on then to actually do financing for several clinics and the first new inpatient mental health facility for youth in Denver. My financing built that. And then to support them in the community and advancing health in everything I do and talk about in my leadership out in the community. Having that triangle and being able to connect those three dots really helps me see the view and the needs of many people and the discussions around our most pressing challenges.
Okay. I've got a question here for you from a listener. Jessica W. writes, traffic violations and road rage are at an all-time high in the city, leading to deadly vehicle accidents and violence. I think we had 82 traffic deaths last year, some record high. So she asks, what are your plans to address this silent epidemic?
We need people to actually be protecting those who are not taking these extraordinary risks with others' lives by speeding and pursuing road rage. And I've talked about my safety rank and exploring our ranks. We can have much more civilian teams and invest in specialized civilian teams to actually enforce our laws in fair and reasonable ways. The next piece is using more technology. I should back up. Lowering the speed limit everywhere. So everybody knows in Denver, when it's posted 30, you can drive 35 or 37, and that's within sort of legal territory. So we need to lower our speed limits for our expectation of how people should drive in every part of our city. Second, enforcement. I talked about expanding our ranks. Using technology, cameras, red light cameras, speeding cameras, much more, and we can do that equitably. So that as we build out our network in more advantaged neighborhoods, we do twice as much in our low-income neighborhoods, where, frankly, the infrastructure is far more dangerous for people walking, biking, and even driving.
So we've got a bunch of questions that we're just grabbing and giving to every candidate as we talk to them. I pulled a couple for you. First one is, we've talked about safety a little bit, and you're playing for the police. I want to talk about that a little bit more. There's a lot of concern about how safe or unsafe Denver is. What do you think? Is Denver a safe place? And what does safety mean to you?
Safety, if I were a single man, safety, I would feel generally safe in Denver. However, I have a family. I have a wife and a daughter who moved throughout the city. And by extension, I don't feel safe in many cases when they are going to work or school or whatever they're doing in a given day, and I can understand how many of our residents do not feel safe, and it's not for fear of the way someone else looks or what It's actually the statistics that we're seeing. We're seeing an increase in violence in every crime, so that's probably the biggest and most concerning trend that I see on the horizon. And it's not just a catalytic converter theft anymore. It's a catalytic converter theft with guns, with, all these other, that is the predicted. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a retired FBI agent, and that's the predictable path of too little law enforcement, well-trained law enforcement, is the people who want to do bad things start acting much more violently, especially as people, arm themselves to try and protect themselves and the like.
All right, this next one's a fun one. Casa Bonita is set to reopen in May. What do you think? Is it a great restaurant or the greatest restaurant?
It's the greatest restaurant. Can I buy a year's worth supply of Friday night dinners with a few friends? Because that's what I'd like to do in honor of and to re-experience Casa Bonita. I would have loved to have moved it here. Sounds like it was in really bad shape when the team bought it, Trey Parker and them, and it would have been great to put it on some 18-wheelers and move that baby over here.
Yeah, where would you have put it in Denver? What's the ideal spot?
Well, the neighborhood that would welcome it, first of all, next to my house. I don't know if my neighbors would welcome it. I tried to paint my house that color. Yeah, I tried to paint my house that pink color, but I got a swift no from my next door neighbors.
All right. Well, just to start wrapping up here, part of the reason that we're doing this project, trying to talk to all 17 candidates for mayor, is that we really want to hear a vision for Denver's future. I think that's what people want right now coming out of the pandemic. It was so hard, such a hard few years. Tell me about your version of Denver. What is the future under Mayor Rodriguez in 5-10 years?
Yeah, I've talked about my vision of building a city where every Denverite can go on to achieve their version of success, whether it's the West Side like me with a single mom or a neighborhood with more advantage. It feels like a really distant vision, but because some of the tough challenges that we just talked about that Denver is facing. But I'm going to keep fighting for Denver, and we can get through those. And once we get through those, we're going to be much closer to my vision. The other thing I'll add is that the values and the sort of the cultural tone that I would like to set as mayor, that I will set as mayor, are built upon honoring and protecting differences as people come to work to build this vision. Secondly, it's to really listen and empathize with everybody who's at the table that we invite into this conversation and into this work. And then lastly, always explaining and communicating what we do and in ways that everybody can understand. So everyone may not agree, but they'll see what the logic was. And, it will, and when we do all of that, we will get to my vision.
Where can listeners learn more about you?
My website, www.Trinidad4Denver.com. You can use the word "for" too, and it'll take you to the right place.
Well, Trinidad Rodriguez, thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thank you. It's been great talking to you. See you at Casa Bonita.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mayoral Madness. What we hope is a 17-part interview series with all the candidates on the ballot to be Denver's next mayor. We're planning to publish these episodes each weekend leading up to Election Day on April 4th, and we'll be providing more news and analysis during the week. Subscribe to CityCast Denver and learn more about Mayoral Madness at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back soon with even more mayoral candidates who want to lead the city.